Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Leadership Insight Group. My name is Richard Kelly. I have Harriet Anderson with me and Bart Lewis. And today in Lead Now and Learn Now is the topic of what if fear was not a factor in your business? I know it's a huge topic to cover. So, we're going to kind of cover specific areas of what we understand it to be. And it would be great if you could add your comments to after viewing the video afterwards. But overcoming fear in business is one of the most underrated yet important skills to master in any entrepreneurial, any organizational journey. And so we're asking is, what's it like learning that skill? And is it a skill? Does it need to be a skill? Or is there something else behind it? In starting to create and growing your business and overcoming that fear that's possibly relevant to you, because every fear is going to be different for everyone. So, ladies and gents, Harriet and Bart, would you like to just kindly introduce yourselves very quickly to the group again?
Shall I start?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm Harriet Andriessen. I'm a coach and I do a lot of work with people who want to change their career. And often that means they want to start a business, which brings many questions with it. And I also work with managers when they face obstacles from one sort or another. And when it comes to fear, it can send us in many different directions. It's a really basic emotion. It's been there since the beginning of our evolution, and we needed it for our survival. Um, and when it really kicks in, then it puts to work the oldest part of our brain, the reptilian brain, which I think always sounds a bit funny. But in any case, when we're with the reptilian brain is active, we go into these three modes: either fight, flight, or freeze. Which, of course, when you're in a situation in the Stone Age or somewhere, those are really the things you need to survive when there's a danger on your road. But then, of course, everything changed in our evolution. Our brains changed, and we've also developed other parts. And the thing is, when fear is really strong, we don't have access to those other parts of our brain, particularly not to the part that helps us to think in a more creative way, to come up with solutions and come up with ideas. So we can be really paralyzed by fear or start running around in 10 directions just to not feel it. And of course, if that happens when you're starting your business or when you're developing your business, that's not going to help you very much. Fear can also be a useful sign to say, okay, be careful, think about what you're doing. And if it takes that function, then of course, it can be helpful. And then it can be very interesting to listen to the questions that are coming up. However, in the most modern new part of our brain, the prefrontal brain, it's creative in coming up with solutions, but it's also creative in coming up with problems and asking questions. But what if happens to this? And if it doesn't work? And if people don't like me? And all of those kinds of elements. And I'm sure we'll go more into that as we develop the theme. And of course, there are ways of dealing with that. And I think, yes, Richard, there are skills involved with dealing with that. But the very first thing is to start by looking it in the eye and see what it really is. Is it something that is there to help you, or is it something that is there to, to stop you or to paralyze you? And I think it's really important to take a good hard look at that and be really honest with yourself. And then hopefully be able to move forward with the right action.
The good old action plan.
Oh, yeah.
Bart Lewis.
Yeah.
Good morning, good afternoon to you.
Thank you for the invitation again. When thinking about fear, I agree with the frame that Harriet said about evolutionary bit of us as human beings. I want to take that a step further to a practical first step, I think, that might help people, and that's first recognizing fear in itself, because it can show up in many different forms, and it might show up in forms that it doesn't look like there's some fear in it, or that fear is the driving factor of it. But to me, when I'm working with business leaders and people in general, fear can show up in a couple of different ways, and one is the old distraction habit. Where it shows up like a drop in focus on the right things that you ought to do. You distract yourself. It's like it's like a not necessarily a distraction from the task at hand, but rather a distraction from the emotions that you're feeling, often in the background of your system. That's one way, and another way might be avoiding taking decisions, craving for more data before you can feel you can decide what you have to decide. So you might be postponing certain decisions and excusing your way out of the taking that decision by saying, I need more data. No. Another way that might be, it might show up, to me, it might be in your direct relationships, where you're a bit more edgy than you normally do, and you're a bit more stressed, and there's a little bit more pressure on your system without really realizing that there might be some fear going on in the background. And it's good. Those examples are just indicators that you're a bit off, and you can use those indicators of like the thing is, for instance, with procrastination or let's say distraction. You're distracted by your iPhone or by something else. That in itself is not the issue, the distraction. It's just a sign for you to know that you're like a bit off center, and mostly it's a bit of suppressed fear, uncertainty, doubt that shows up. If that makes sense. So it's important if you want to move forward and get out of a place where fear is holding you, whether you're conscious of it or not, where fear is holding you a bit clamped down or in a little cage, to become aware of that and to become aware of how that shows up in your life. And it can manifest in many different forms. And taking a few minutes to investigate your stress habits, your distractions, your avoiding decisions, stuff like that might be helpful for that.
Are we saying then, Harriet and Bart, are we saying that fear is more relating to circumstances and situations, or is it things that we're creating ourselves, within ourselves? Is the fear really created from within? This is what I'm trying to understand. Is it created from within, or is it really created from something outside? especially for the business context.
Yeah.
I mean, if we look at it, I need to get more clients, or I need to get more consumers to buy my products.
Mhm.
Are we manifesting that fear from within, or are we manifesting that fear from outside because we're seeing all our competitors have got all our clients?
Well, to me, it's there's only one way how our system works, and it might look like the fear is caused by a lack of clients or whatever, or a lack of resources, or a future outcast of the economy of or the COVID situation. But that in itself is not like a creator of fear in your system. Because if you take two people, and one will see opportunity, and the other will see a dark situation that it seems they can get out of it. And I'm not saying one is more correct than the other, but what I'm saying is that if people can have different experiences in the same context, it shows you that the context is not necessarily the sole or main driver of what you're feeling. So when we get back to fear, the fear expression or the fear is an internally generated emotion that you can learn to first to recognize in the examples I early gave, but also when you have recognized that, learn to handle and let's take less seriously, or let's say that you can learn to make not such a big deal out of the fear in itself, that you keep that it does not distract your habits or your behaviors, and does not distract you from where you want to go. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
What do you think, Harriet?
No, I agree. Definitely, I think it is not the circumstances, because as you say, it's how you interpret them that decide how you feel about it. That was one of the biggest things I learned in my coaching training. They say that there is not a problem, there is a perception of a problem. And so it's how you perceive things, how you interpret them, that make you feel like there's a danger or an opportunity, as you said. But the thing is then, what are the elements in ourselves that make us interpret it one way or another? And I think quite a bit of that has to do with how you feel about yourself, your ability to deal with situations as they come up, to deal with challenges. And so if you feel that you feel pretty confident you can deal with whatever life is throwing at you, then you will probably more quickly see the opportunity in the situation. And when you think that you don't really have the skills or the resources or the personality, because very often we think it's really linked to us, then of course you will think, oh my God, how much worse can it get? And then our creative brain can come up with a lot of disaster scenarios. And we see quite a bit of that going on in the world right now. So then the question is indeed how to deal with it when you notice that this is going on. And very often to become aware of what's going on, it's also a good idea to see how your body is reacting. Just to come back to the previous point, because sometimes your thoughts are so clever to distract you from the issue or to talk you away from not facing something difficult, but it's harder to trick your body. And very often the body will express a fear or stress. There can be headaches or weekend migraines. You know, you function all week, but then the weekend you let go and boom, the migraine hits you. Or stomach problems or those kinds of things. So they can be indicators that your body's trying to tell you something like, pay attention. But then once you realize that it's something about how you look at things, then I think it's really interesting to start looking to think about your beliefs about life, about yourself, about the economy, about how difficult it is to start a business or how easy it will be to start your business. And I think it's really interesting to try and find out what your beliefs are, your convictions about the situation and your ability to deal with them. And very often then you realize that you've taken over ideas or beliefs from other people. A lot is on very often how you grew up. If you grew up in a situation where, you know, your parents keep telling you the money doesn't grow on trees, and you know it's like, and you get these messages that life is hard and those things, you will take that with you and think, oh, well, starting a business will be hard as well. And if you're in a different situation and things are considered more positively, then you'll probably think it's a bit easier to do. But beliefs are things that you can change. There are ideas that you developed, and when you realize they don't serve you anymore, you can decide to change them and look at things differently and start to feel differently as a first step.
So what I'm seeing there is, from what you both discussed there, it's all kind of coming from what's wanted. I want this, I want to get this, and then you create that fear from within yourself, and saying, oh, I need that now in real time. I want it now. You know, this is something I want it now. And then you create that process, that energy, whatever we wish to call it, where internally, if you're at your best, you know inside you that you've got that presence, you have that compassion, you have that love, that creativity to deal with what is coming up at that time. So really going inwardly to look at yourself and say, okay, as Bart and you, Harriet, has said as well, just taking that time, that moment to kind of say, is that really real? Or am I making it up? Is that reality really here right now? Does that fear really exist in my business right now? Yeah, but I've got clients and I need to get more clients. Yeah, but is it really here? Are the clients really in this room right now? Or is it actually just sitting yourself, calming yourself down and looking at it from a different perspective? And being present and knowing that you can create them possibilities and not coming from a lack of insecurity, of thinking, or fear, of lack of, but more of, yeah, okay, that's how it is. That's how I'm thinking it is. That's how I'm looking at it is at this moment in time. So let's roll the dice again and move on.
Yeah. And I think you're using two words interesting there. You say what you want and what you need. And I think very often problems come up, or we make it difficult for ourselves because instead of really wanting to do something that drives us, that a positive result that we're really looking for, or that makes us happy, or that makes us feel like this is our mission in life, this was, you know, what I'm here to do in this life, very often it gets mixed up or overshadowed by needing to get a certain result. I need to succeed so I will feel valuable. I need to get these clients so my partner will think I'm a good person. I need to do this so my children will be proud of me, or so that I will feel good about myself. And then it's not really the thing in itself that you want, but the result that you need to feel better. And I think that can also really cloud your creativity to come up with ideas to really move forward in a positive manner. So it's all very much about motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Bart, you got anything to add on that?
It's I think when you look deeper at fear, it's these days we're all, especially in the Western world, and if you're looking at this webinar, you're like physically in a safe spot to be able to do that. So the fear is not like a physical threat. Or a direct physical threat. Yeah. So what is it? And to me, it's like a disconnect between where you think you should be, or you should be going, or how the circumstances should be working out, versus what's happening in this moment. And you're comparing this moment with what you think it should be.
Mm.
And if you keep doing that, you will always feel unrest. And you always feel like there's something that needs to be fixed, or something that needs to be improved, or that's on the low end. On the upper end, it's like more might be show up like depression, or like a fear, or more extreme feelings. And it taps into what we said earlier. It's like an internal triggered thinking loop that you get yourself into, that moves you out of being present where you are, and conflicting that with what you think should be there now. So that, to me, that's not a most useful place to be when you want to create a better future, or a different future, or a different circumstance. And it's rather the vision can be good, but if you keep comparing that and saying this is not good enough, this moment is not, should be different than it is, then there will always be stress. There will always be frustration and fears and doubts and insecurities, right? So if you take that a bit more practical, say I have like a big decision to make, and I gather a lot of data, and that fear response comes up. It's not necessarily about the data, but about an expression of the decision that you imagine doing, which has nothing to do with where you are in this moment. So like you said earlier, if you can return, Richard, if you can return to where you are here in this moment, and stop comparing to what you imagine things should be like or will be like, then the fear factor will diminish strongly. But it's a thing that you can learn. It's a thing that might not look easy, especially when you're in it. So it might take a bit of practice, and or it might take a bit of work with a coach or a mentor, or exploring yourself.
Mm. So when we're saying here, we're not trying to fix it.
Oh, sure, fear is not the issue.
No.
Fear is not, it's never the issue. Confusion is not the issue. It's what you make of that fear. It's our reaction to that. Because I just explained where that fear originates in your day-to-day life. But that in itself would not be such an issue if you don't make it an issue. So why do we distract ourselves? Because we don't feel like feeling fearful is a good thing for us. And it's often an unconscious response. So we are not aware that that is happening in the backside. But if you learn to hold fear in itself and see you for what it is, fear doesn't tell you anything about the future. Fear doesn't tell you anything about the circumstances. It only tells you what you've been doing internally. So, and it will come and it will go. And if fear could hurt you, you wouldn't be listening to this the webinar, because we have been having fearful emotions and triggers and responses for all our lives. Yeah. So the only thing that we can learn is take our distractions and hold that fear without being fearful of the fear. That makes sense. Being fearful of the fear is probably the most distractful thing that you can do for yourself. That's not a good place to be in when you're like leading a team or leading a business or running your own business or trying to get clients, because you will stall picking up the phone, or you will stall contacting that person. So there's a thing to learn about holding your own emotions without being afraid of your own emotions. But that's like a bit of the maturing of the person. It's not something that we will learn, or that people rarely learn growing up, because most people around us haven't learned that themselves. So who's going to teach us that? The whole society, if you look outside, is driven on, or is driven by people who are also struggling with holding their emotions, clearly, or holding their fears and their pressures and stuff like that. So it's a bit of a bigger social, a bigger thing in society. But for us personally, I think working with a coach, working with a mentor, working with a therapist, whatever makes sense to you, will help you not to be afraid of those emotions.
Yeah, I think fear is, as you say, Bart, it's not the thing itself, but it's most of, yes, I think pretty much always a signal that it's time to look at a couple of things, and particularly to look at your own attitude in the situation, and what are the ideas that you have about how you can move forward. And the more you feel able to do things, the less the fear will get a hold of you. And that's not necessarily something that, as you say, we're not born with that really. And in our upbringing and in society, there are a lot of things where fear is developed or worked with or direct. I mean, look at I see the rise of the extreme right. A lot of what they use is fear to get people to follow them. But if you use fear in that way, you're not really looking at what you can do with it to make things better. But for yourself personally, I think if you see it as a signal and an indication that it's time to start thinking about things or to look at things, and I think very often by talking with somebody, either a professional or somebody you trust, that can just help to see the relativity of it, that it's maybe not that bad and that there are many things that you can do so that you feel more positive, and the fear will not paralyze you or send you in a panic direction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. this, I mean, this is it's a subject in itself, fear. And we're trying to cover it in business, in a business context. I mean, we can go in so many different avenues with that, but I think you've both covered it in a general and a simple way for people in the business world to have a bit of understanding of where we come from with the work that we do with our clients. So I appreciate that. I mean, it's interesting to hear how both of you have come with your perspectives on fear and how it affects business and society. And I totally agree with both your comments there about that in respect of people take on the fear because they believe it's for them to take on, because they think it's right for them to take on that fear.
Mm.
But they don't understand that that fear is not coming from the outside. It's from them experiencing something for themselves. And that understanding, it's as both of you have shared, it's not about, oh, I've got to overcome this fear and I'll be okay. No, the fear is just telling you you're off-centered with something. You're not present enough with something. You're not giving that freedom with yourself and even the possibility and even that loving yourself again, which really carries it through in everything that comes up. And once you kind of grasp that it's just a fear that you have created in effect internally, you kind of, as Bart was saying, you kind of can't say grow out of it, but you kind of evolve from that. And your learning experience always continues all the time. But that vulnerability of fear of growing your business, or the fear factor within the business, you as you say, you just kind of say, okay, well, I see it as this, so hey, this is my perspective. And having a coach or mentor to create that understanding for you to say, yeah, but have you looked at it in this direction? Have you seen it in this direction? I don't know. Okay, so it isn't as bad as it makes out to be as a fear factor in the business.
No, it's also not about not having fear at all.
Yeah.
Because the thing rather is to me that you don't have to be identified with the fear. You don't have to identify with the fear. And if you're not doing that, if you just can hold the fear without let me rephrase that. If you can hold the fear, just knowing that the fear in itself cannot hurt you, and that it's a showing of energy that comes and goes, and it's never like a stable thing. It rises in intensity and it slows down. Yeah. And you can catch that before you distract yourself away from the feeling. You can learn to catch that and just stay with it. And when you stay with that emotion, that feeling, it passes very quickly. When you distract yourself by doing that, you will keep returning to it. You will keep, it's like it keeps lingering underneath the system. And when you learn to just, it's like back to what you said earlier, learning to become present in this moment. And then the fears show up and they pass, and the other states of mind show up and they pass. But you will be staying in that same present spot. When you identify with the fear and the emotions, you will distract yourself. You will work it out on other people. You will stall decisions, avoid context, stuff like that. You know, I used to work with in a previous life, I used to work with artists who were showing up each night on stage. And for the audience, it looks like they're on stage, that is their comfortable spot. But in working with artists, you know that for many, it's a scary as hell thing to get on stage. So scary that some throw up each night before they go out on stage, you know, and they have been doing that like for 2-3 decades, every night over and over again. But they know that the fear and the stress response that they have before they're on stage will last as long as the first 2 steps they take and they walk up to the mic, and then it's gone. And it's interesting that they keep their focus on what's important, and they get not distracted by the emotion. So it might seem like there's like this thing you have to push through the fear. It's not like pushing through the fear, it's rather staying aware with it, and then it passes. And stay aware with that and know where you're going. That makes sense.
Yeah. Focusing on what you
focusing
it.
So if you get yourself, and that's why I said earlier that catching yourself where you're distracting yourself is a very good indicator for catching an underlying fear and returning back to your focus, to where you want to go. Sorry, go ahead, Richard.
No, I was just trying to conclude what you were saying, and I think the focusing is part of that process, as well as the self-awareness of where you are, and it was a great kind of description analog of it with the actors, etc., on stage, and how within that 2-minute process they know what they're focusing on.
Yeah.
And they've come back to that, being focused, being present, and just doing what they need to do in that moment.
Because if they would focus on the fear, they will never get on.
Yeah.
They
on
will
stage.
never get on stage.
No.
Right? And it's like being, oh fuck, I'm not feeling okay at this moment. Scared shitless, and I'm throwing up, and I'm feeling, but I know that is not the end. That's not it, right? And it's not necessarily, it's not a funny experience, or it's not a great experience, but after all, it's an experience. Like you have every moment of the day, you have experiences, and experiences in itself do not touch you. It's and knowing that will take the sting out of the experience that you're identifying with, will take the sting out of the fear. And it's just like, knowing that is often enough to get you back for. I remember I had to do this a while back. I had to do this phone call with someone, and the message wasn't. It was a hard message for her to hear, and I knew, and I stalled that for the longest time. And I created a lot of reasons why I stalled that. well, what she might think, what she might think of me, all that. But it was like that. I was distracting myself away from feeling that momentary feeling that I imagined having when picking up the phone. So, but realizing what it was, well, the feeling was there, but the feeling wasn't important. I made a whole story out of the feeling. And didn't help me, didn't help her, didn't get me to do what I needed to do, right? And it's not, and I could excuse me, yeah, but I could find a zillion reasons. But that's distraction. That's distraction, and it's so tempting because we do that more than we think we do. Most people do that more than they think they do, and we all have our little spots, blind. We call them blind spots, but they're not really blind spots, you know. we know about them, only we ignore them. And we ignore them not because the task at hand might be too difficult or what, but because we just don't like to feel that feeling. And we make more out, and the thing is, we make more out of the feeling than we most of the time should, because the you know, the feeling that's circling back to what Harriet said in the beginning, it feels like almost a death threat. It's like a physical tiger attack or something like that. But there are no tigers around. No, not where you're sitting, right? The physical threat isn't there. And now we have the so-called physical threat of COVID. But if you look in reality, it's not a direct physical threat, right?
Yeah.
I'm always reminded of this little. You know, when you're out and on a terrace and having your dinner, and there's a little bird that lands next to you on the ground, and it picks up a little bit food. And you know what birds do? They pick the food and they look around. Is there any danger? Is there any danger? Before they do not relax in just eating their food. That's not what animals do. They pick and they directly look for a threat. That's something most all of us also do consistently. We're looking for threats, and we're looking for emotional threats. And our brain cannot make a difference between a major threat, a feeling, and a real physical threat, a real tiger or a real, you know? So we get in this confused space where our emotions and our feelings are running rather than them passing by in our system, and learning to get back to that where you can have your emotions without them having you helps you to get. Well, it's call it a skill to learn, call it maturing of the system. But in this space and time, I think it's one of the most worthwhile things to do, not only for yourself, but also for where you want to get, for the results you want to get in business, but also for your relationships with your partner, with your spouse, with your kids, with family members.
So what we can say is there's no tigers.
There's no tigers.
Enjoy it. Just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it. Listen, I'd like to say thank you to you both, because I know it's our time up here. We said we would do a certain time slot here. So I really want to thank you both for sharing. I know it's a theme that we'll possibly do again, because I think it's such an expanding and such an enthralling and really great conversation to continue having. So I think we'll do another theme on that later on. And so I'd like to thank Bart Loos and Harriet Anderson for their conversation on the fear factor. And for those who are watching this, we'd love to hear from you about the comments. Please put them in below. And if you wish to contact myself, Bart, or Harriet, then please feel free to do so as well. We hope you to join us on our next topic. And so watch out on our LinkedIn profiles, etc. So for myself, from Bart and from Harriet, I thank you for your time, and look forward to hearing from you again soon. So thanks again. Bye-bye now.
Bye.